Hello, hello, and welcome back to Bearing Birth, a birth story podcast highlighting the emotional impact of birth, the immediate postpartum period, and the years beyond. I'm Sophie, a perinatal mental health therapist.
And I'm Jordan, a doula specializing in postpartum support. Before we get started today, just a quick note here to say that we are recording this intro virtually, but the conversation with our guest was in person. Today, we are chatting with another amazing guest who shares an incredible story. Her name is Anna, and we actually had the pleasure of meeting her through our previous guests, Jules and Garrett.
Yeah, this podcast has connected us with so many new people who have become friends, which I think is really cool, and I'm grateful for. In this episode, Anna shares with us the birth story of her son, who is a year old now. Anna is a breast cancer survivor and shares with us how she got pregnant and gave birth after she was told she couldn't and shouldn't get pregnant by doctors.
Anna has unfortunately had to endure quite a lot of medical trauma between her cancer treatment and her labor and birth.
Yeah, she has, and I felt, as I'm sure you did too, Jordan, a lot of emotions while listening to her story. A lot of anger and sadness for what Anna had to go through that she didn't need to, I think, had people perhaps been more thoughtful. I really admire Anna's ability to trust herself and follow her body's instincts, and I am beyond impressed at her dedication to feeding her son with one breast. Feeding a child with two is hard on its own. I imagine she might feel like it's the only option that she has, but to me as an outsider, it's badass and inspiring.
I definitely feel the same. Often I feel really angry and sad for our guests when there are difficult parts of their stories that could have been avoided, but I totally agree with you that it's so admirable when we hear about guests like Anna finding their power and strength despite the challenges they've faced. Her story also highlights how the universe places someone very important into Anna's life at a critical moment in her pregnancy journey, as well as some really funny moments with her son.
After we recorded with Anna, she mentioned she had forgotten to include several significant parts to her story. This is actually an interesting observation of hearing at least a dozen birth stories now. Most everyone has reported back to us after we finished our recording session that they didn't think they'd talk about something they did, or they were surprised they forgot to mention something that impacted them greatly. This is one of the reasons talk therapy can be so helpful. Every time we externalize out loud experiences that we've gone through, especially in dialogue with other people, we have the opportunity to uncover something new and create a new narrative. Anna wrote out a note for us to read that explains some of the details she wanted to make sure were a part of her story, including her experience with granulation tissue and a little dedication post. This will be read at the end of the episode by Jordan, so stay tuned for that.
We also have a few content warnings for this episode, including breast cancer, chemotherapy, single mastectomy, medical trauma, including unsuccessful anesthesia during a procedure, intrusive thoughts, tearing during birth, blood transfusions, incorrectly placed epidural, and miscarriage. However, as with many of the stories on our podcast, there are some really empowering and inspirational moments as well.
We really hope you enjoyed this next episode with Anna, and thank you so much, Anna, for coming on and being vulnerable and sharing your journey and your birth story.
A doula and a therapist are sitting down to talk about birth. A doula and a therapist are sitting down to talk about birth.
There's so much. It's like,
yeah. Well, we can help you get started. You can walk us through whatever you'd like to share, but if you want, you can start out with what your pregnancy was like and the days leading up to giving birth.
Okay. Probably some backstory, history, maybe, is kind of important going into it. I got cancer, breast cancer, in my mid-20s, and there's a whole lot of trauma like leading up to that kind of physically stayed in my body and all of these things. And I was told that I couldn't/shouldn't get pregnant after all of that. And so it was this thing where I didn't really necessarily want kids until it was like, oh, I can't or I shouldn't. And then it was this like sad feeling of like, oh, I missed out, and mentally I was good at working through all those traumas, but physically I didn't really know how to heal that in my body.
Do you feel like learning that news sort of put things into a different perspective for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really weird thing to work through, like, oh, do I just am I longing for this because I can't have it? Or is this something that I've actually genuinely wanted my whole life? And just, now that I'm at a place in time where it makes sense, I can't do it. It was really difficult to work through all of that. And so when I got pregnant, it was not planned, and but it was this feeling of my body knows what it's doing, and I need to trust it, and I need to listen that my body's capable of this. Because for a long time, I had so many doubts about my own body. Like you go through this whole ordeal with cancer, and there's so kind of everything in that universe is like pushy and judgmental, like oncologists, being hospitalized, just other people, there's so many opinions about cancer and treatment and how you cope with it. And it's like, this is this thing that I'm going through. Why does everyone have so many opinions about it? So kind of coming to terms with this, like, I can trust my own body to be strong and do what it needs to do, was this really healing and freeing revelation for me.
Where did you find the ability to trust your body after going through an experience like cancer?
It kind of came in little blips here and there. Like I would have moments of like, oh, yeah, my body's strong, my body's capable. And, and then something else would happen and I would come like, oh, I'm weak or, whatever it is. And then honestly, it was the pregnancy that was really the turning point for me, where I was like, my body is determined to do this. And I have this strong feeling of just knowing that this is what I'm supposed to do. And it was really bizarre because I had never had that complete, like, mental, physical, emotional connectedness of trust with my physical body.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, we got to at least find out, right? Like, I had just gotten this new health insurance, so I didn't know any of the doctors on it. So I just scheduled with, I looked through some pictures and profiles and picked a nurse or an OBGYN that I was like, okay, we'll just go see her and hope for the best. And we get to the appointment, we get in the room, and they're like, oh, that doctor couldn't make it this day. Hopefully you're okay with a replacement. And we're like, okay, sure. I didn't know her anyway. And in walks this woman who would become one of the most amazing, important people in my life. It was totally like a cosmic event. The stars aligned. It was a woman who had also gone through breast cancer.
Wow.
And went on to have twins.
Wow.
Which is kind of a whole interesting side story of I have this knack for kind of finding these amazing, like, spiritual, energetic beings in my life, which is really cool, and I feel really lucky for it. But several of them had brought up twins in various ways, and, like, either thinking I was going to have twins, and I was like, nope, you're crazy. Not happening. Or, like, I keep seeing something about twins in this, like, I pulled some tarot cards for you, but I don't really, like, it doesn't make sense. I don't know. And so then here's this doctor, right? And she's like, oh, well, I went on and I had twins. It's like, oh, that's where the twins came from, huh?
Oh, so it was like a vision you saw, or the tarot cards that you pulled?
It was other people that kept bringing up the twins. And I was like, why do people keep bringing this to me? Like, I don't know. So I think that was it. And it was like, okay, here's your doctor. Here's your person. If anyone's going to, like, walk with you through this, she's your girl.
That could have gone a completely different way. Someone else could have walked in.
Yeah, exactly.
I got chills over my body.
I did too.
Yeah. It was crazy. And it was like, after so much trauma in the medical field, like, I mean, I was terrified of doctors after all that. I was like, I don't want anything.
I mean, it's hard enough even when you're doing your research and choosing someone that still might not end up working out.
Yeah. And I was so grateful. And I just felt this, like, wave of relief because she was like, it's like, this is possible. And sure, maybe, maybe cancer will come back and you can deal with that. But also we can navigate that however is comfortable. And that was the amazing thing for me, because I was expecting like, oh geez, if I go through with this, am I going to have to go back and see all these oncologists and go through, this barrage of other specialists, and that's not what I want to do in this pregnancy. And she was like, no, you don't have to. And she truly advocated for that, which made such a difference. She was like, your partner can talk to the oncologist with questions and just get some information.
I was going to ask, to tell you that you shouldn't get pregnant, was that based on your personal, like what was going on with you health-wise, or is that sort of a blanket statement for people who are going through breast cancer in like the period of treatment that you were in?
It's hard to know. I think my specific type of breast cancer was really, initially it was triggered by like a hormonal spike. I had a miscarriage, and that was the hormonal spike that like triggered this really aggressive cancer. I had this just giant tumor, and it was in my lymph nodes, which they missed at first.
Oh my gosh.
It was like months later into treatment that some random radiologist happened to be looking at my chart, and they're like, oh, by the way, that wasn't tattoo ink in the biopsy. That was cancer in the lymph nodes. Oh, cool. Good to know. Good. So I couldn't do any hormonal birth control after all of that, because that was causing a risk for recurring cancer. And so
I didn't even know there were types of breast cancer.
Yeah, it's really interesting that they don't educate more, during this whole process. Like, I feel like I still don't know anything about cancer, and I went through it. It's like, what?
I certainly didn't know that a miscarriage could trigger breast cancer. Yeah, that sounds like,
I didn't either.
Compiling trauma.
Yeah. Oh, totally. It totally was. Like, there was a lot built up, and so I think for me specifically, because mine was responsive to because some people can go through breast cancer and still use hormonal birth control afterwards, and it's okay. But for whatever reason, mine was a type that they're like, nope, and pregnancy is dangerous. And the way that I understood it was pretty much what I was told was like, if you get pregnant or try to have a baby, you're like guaranteed to have recurring cancer.
Oh, wow.
Like, just, so there's that.
And then this doctor told you otherwise.
Yeah. And she was like, that's not necessarily true. She's like, there are some people who don't get cancer again, some who do later. She's like, it's really different for everyone. And it is possible to get through this. And that was what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely, I needed to hear that it was just possible. Because my body was so insistent on saying, this is what I need to do. This is what I was made to do. Just trust me. Just stop doubting and just let me do this process and show you what I'm capable of.
That's so much strength and just like this, profound trust that you have to have.
Yeah. And it like surprised me. I was like, okay, body. Like, I'll give you this shot. Let's do it. I mean, she just worked with me and advocated for me in every way. Like, letting my partner talk to the oncologist instead of having me do it. Because I was like, there's so much anxiety and stuff wrapped up in that. And even just with them, they would call me and they would be super pushy. Like, no, you need to come in for an appointment and you need to do all this stuff. And I was like, look, my doctor said that I could do forms and you could just talk to my partner, and I didn't need to be involved unless I needed to be involved, and they were like, no, that's not right. And she kept going to bat for me. She's like, no, it is right. That's what we're doing.
Wow.
And so it took a few consent forms and a few back and forth phone calls, and they finally were like, okay, we'll talk to you. We'll talk to Michael. So
yeah, that's great to just have such a strong advocate. Was that the first time that you had ever felt that from somebody in the medical?
Yeah, to that level, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, this is someone who actually cares. I was like, this is fantastic.
And had such a relatable experience too.
Yeah. And she just, her energy is amazing. She's just a really wonderful, loving, kind person. And I was just, it was so perfect.
Yeah. Can I ask a quick question about after you were told that you can't take hormonal birth control, what did you do?
It was tricky. I mean, you can basically use condoms. You can get a copper IUD, but only the copper one, which I was like, that's painful. I was conceived when my mother was in her 40s with a copper IUD.
Whoa.
So I was like, you know what? That's a lot of pain and effort for something that I know might not work.
I feel like not a lot of people know how painful it is too.
Yeah. Like, I don't like pain.
Yeah.
Well, then why did you have a baby, Anna?
Well, also going through cancer treatment too, I imagine that's painful in some way, emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many crazy things with that. They insert like a port in your chest that attaches to your heart to do chemo. And that whole thing was an ordeal. I was supposed to be asleep when they inserted it. Like, it was a little surgery, and I was not. And they didn't have an extra anesthesiologist there. And they were like, it's the end of the day. The on-call person is hours away. Sorry, we can't give you anything else or we'll overdose you. And I was just like hysterical. I was like, I can feel everything. I can hear everything. I'm like crying. I'm like, can someone at least hold my hand? This is a nightmare.
That's so much trauma.
Yeah. And that was just the start of the journey. And it was like, from there, it just kind of kept piling on. And I was just like, no, I hate this. I hate everything about it.
Wow. It must have meant so much for you to feel like when you got pregnant that you were able to take your power back and take that on. Like, the fact that you felt that must have felt so profound. After like
to have everything ripped away from you, and then to be given this opportunity to trust your body it's powerful in ways that I don't think there are words for, really. It's just like, whoa, going from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
Really amazing. So yeah, I had this rock star doctor, and I was so scared, but also so at peace with this trust that I had with my physical body. And I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And my health throughout pregnancy was amazing.
Wow.
I was shocked. Like, I thought for sure I was going to be, just throwing up all the time, like everything that could, all those miserable pregnancy stories you hear. I thought I was going to have them all, I was like, oh. And I didn't. I never threw up. I just felt great.
Wow.
I was having seizures before I got pregnant. I didn't have a single seizure during pregnancy.
Wow.
It's like my body truly was like, this is what I want to do. I'm doing it, and I'm healthier for it. Like,
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That the chemical makeup in your body at that time being pregnant, like the hormones going through, was the right combination for your body to thrive somehow.
Yeah. And I feel like it has something to do with that trust that I like physically gave myself in a way. Like, it was just like, no, I'm going to prove to you that I can do this. And it did it. Unfortunately, that didn't really last through the whole labor and delivery process, but the whole pregnancy was great.
The trust didn't last? Or like the uncomplicated?
The uncomplicated. Okay. Yeah. I guess the trust got a little rocky in the process, but I think that's probably normal.
Very normal.
Yeah. I had this feeling that, kiddo was going to come a little early. Like, his due date was on the Pisces Aries cusp, spring equinox. It was like this really cool day. And I was like, okay, cool. So he could be like this little chill fish or this little, fiery, rowdy, rambunctious ram. Let's hope for the chill fish side of things, Like, yeah. Due date came and went, and then another week goes by. And so he was almost 2 weeks late. And they had to induce, which I did not want to do. You know, like my whole thing was like, look, I'm trusting my body. My body knows what I'm doing, what it's doing. We're going to go with that. You know, I don't want to add any extra anything.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, like we'll push it off as long as we can, but this is going to start getting dangerous. And, you know, we have to do a little something, but we'll kind of go as slow as we can. And my doctor was going on vacation.
Oh, no.
Like she had been waiting, you know, she's like looking at the like hospital list, you know, like looking for my name around the time, like just
Yeah. The one that you really connected with.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I really want her to be there. And then she had this vacation, and you know, it was 2 weeks after I was supposed to have the baby, so I was like, oh, I wasn't really worried about it, but she was there. We did like a Foley catheter at night, and she was there to place that. So she was there for like the beginning of the induction process. And that meant a lot to me. You know, I was like, okay, if I have to do this, at least it's her that's getting this party started. And I was just so nervous. And I was so pregnant. Like,
I have so many like little questions. And I kind of like feel myself being like some anger for you or some frustration. And hearing about how this person you really connected with and was advocating for you to not follow certain protocols. And I know that an induction after 2 weeks from the due date is a certain protocol or a standard way of doing things. And I'm just kind of wondering, there is no exact time. There's like a big range of normal, and some people do go to 43 weeks.
Well, it's risk assessment.
Yeah.
You know, like weighing pros and cons.
Yeah. Was there an option at all for you to continue trusting your body, or what was that like?
no, they kind of let me trust my body as long as I could. And they're like, okay, it's medically necessary now.
Okay.
So we got to get this, got to get it started. You know, they're like, we could, you know, kind of monitor you pretty much full time, and then, you know, kind of do a more aggressive induction if we need to. And I was like, I don't really want to do, you know, let's do it slow. If we're gonna have to do this, then let's do it slow.
Yeah. What was that like for you to hear that after having this pregnancy where you were really enjoying yourself, and then to hear that news? What was that like?
It was disheartening, you know. I was like, we made it this far, like really. So I was bummed about it, you know. And I tried everything to go into labor. I mean, I'm out there walking on the street doing the curb walking. Have you heard of that? I had never heard of that until I was desperate. Yeah. You know, people driving by giving me these looks. I'm just super pregnant lady waddling up and down on this curb. Come on, baby, get out.
I'm sure at least some people who saw you were like, yep, I know what that is.
We know what that is, yeah. So many trips up and down the stairs. Michael made me watch Top Gun because I don't love Top Gun. I'm sorry. It's one of those movies that's kind of torture for me to watch. He's like, yeah, if we make you watch this, like, you'll just go into labor. I'm like, sure, okay, I'm desperate enough. Let's try it. So I'm bouncing on my yoga ball during the entire movie of Top Gun. Like, all right, kid, if you're going to come, now's the time. Did not. But he was stubborn. I mean, it's so interesting, the things that you can, I mean, you're so curious about what your baby's going to be like, but you also are like, I kind of know you. You know, you spend 9 months with this little creature growing inside of you, this little being. And he was stubborn. He was breech until the very last second, pretty much. I turned him with energy medicine, which was kind of cool.
What is that?
So this particular technique that my friend taught me, my childhood friend is an energy worker, and she's amazing. It's you do counterclockwise circles with your left hand over your sacral chakra. Is the energy way to spin a breech baby. And it worked, which was kind of crazy.
Wow.
Like he was so stubborn. And like we're looking into all these ways to like turn a breech baby. And the doctor's like, no, we don't really recommend any of those. It was during this time where my doctor was really busy with other appointments, and like, I couldn't really get in to see her. And so I was seeing these other doctors, and they were like, no, we're not gonna, don't try any of those things. We'll wait till week 36, and then we'll do a procedure where we get in there and spin and do all that. And it's like, I don't want to do that, you know? And yeah, for whatever reason, this whole sacral chakra spinning thing worked. I started doing it, and like, could feel them kind of.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And I went in for my appointment, and they're like, oh, well, his head's down now. All right.
And what?
Cool.
How many weeks were you at that point?
I think it was 36.
Yeah.
Something like that, if I remember right. It's all kind of a blur.
So you were at 42 weeks or 41 weeks, and then they said, here's a Foley balloon.
Yeah, so we did the Foley at night, and I had a 63-hour labor.
Whoa.
How many days is that if we calculate that?
Almost 3.
3? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, 72 hours is 3 days, yeah.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Wow.
So they put this catheter in, right? And I don't know what to expect. No one warned me that I was going to have 3 tails dangling in between my legs.
These are the things that we should talk about on the podcast,
Right?
because nobody talks about
No
them.
one
And
talks
then
about
you
them.
go, and then
I
you're
had
like,
no
what?
idea. Yeah. I mean, they explained, it's like this little balloon that presses up against your cervix and kind of, mimics like a baby's head. So it kind of triggers this natural response for your cervix to, do what it needs to do. I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's, that feels better than drugs or, yeah, we'll give that a try. I go in, and it was like, she's like, okay, so there's these tubes that are going to hang out a little bit. And you can go home and sleep tonight, and then you'll come back in the morning, and, we'll go from there.
You got to go home with the Foley balloon in?
Yeah. They're like, unless you, go into labor sooner, then, obviously come in, which I didn't. And I couldn't sleep. So I didn't sleep for like a week, really, before he was born. I mean, I was so stressed out, for one. But then, I get this catheter thing, and it doesn't stick out just a little bit. I mean, it's like 6 inches down your legs, and it's like dangling. It's really a bizarre feeling. I'm like waddling out of the hospital with this thing kind of swinging.
What did it feel like to
legs.
be put in?
It was a bit painful. It didn't feel great.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been through worse, but it wasn't ideal.
I feel like there's a lot that they say to go sleep during.
Yeah.
It's just like, so many little things that's like, that's not going to help me sleep.
I know. I'm like, okay, so it's sort of this like, you may or may not go into labor sort of thing. And I'm like, okay, well, am I going to, like, should I be ready to go? Like, I don't, I should sleep.
Yeah.
Couldn't sleep, just laying there, thoughts racing.
What were you thinking about?
Like, probably 5 million things I can't even remember. It was like, I would have all these little random intrusive thoughts that had nothing to do with anything. And I would like hyperfixate on, what if there's a fire? Like, why would I think about that? There's no reason, What if the power goes out? Are we ready for a power outage?
Yeah.
What?
I think it's that instinctive, mother, parent brain.
Yeah,
Right about to
definitely.
go into labor. Like creating, with intrusive thoughts, you like think of the worst thing so that you can prepare for it in a way.
Right.
It's funny, though, where it goes.
Oh, yeah, totally. I feel like it's like on the tip of my brain. There were a few like really weird random things that I was thinking about, and I can't remember for the life of me. But anyway, so I had an appointment in the morning to go back to the hospital, and they're like, that's when we're going to admit you, and we're going to get the show on the road, and, we'll let you do this trusting your body thing. Like, we'll take it as slow as we can. We're not just going to like push this full thing, I was like, okay, good. So I get to the hospital in the morning.
Did you get any sleep at all?
No. I think I napped for like half an hour, maybe. But my doctor was there in the parking lot. She had just worked the night shift and was about to go on her vacation. And all of a sudden, I see this woman like come running from in between these cars. And I'm like, what? And I was like, it's you. She comes and gives me this huge hug. And I was just like that was a moment for me that I like held with me through the whole process. I was like, she is so
What are
wonderful.
the odds with the timing that you arrive and she's on her way out? And you see each other.
It was really special. So at least I got to see her. I got a hug. I got a little boost of feel good energy, and then we went in for the longest labor ever. Oh.
And at that point, it was like 61 hours, or do you count the time at home after the balloon was inserted?
I think I counted it from when the balloon was inserted.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I feel like it counts if you're not sleeping.
Yeah, right. And technically, it is an induction for labor, and so yeah. So then it was just this long waiting game of they kept saying, like, "Oh, it's really close," and then it wouldn't be. It was like this little carrot was dangling. They're like, "Yeah, you're dilating and all this. It's gonna be soon." Like I was having contractions like crazy. This kid was just super active and like, yeah, we're gonna anytime.
Was this happening just all you had was the balloon, or had they started adding to the?
I'm trying to remember how long.
I'm sure it's a blur.
Yeah, it was a blur. They did eventually have to add both medications. We started with one and did that for a long time, and then they were like, "Okay, we got to do the other." I was like,
and that's Pitocin and
misoprostol.
Yeah.
However you say it. Yeah.
I just called it miso soup.
Miso. Yeah, and it was like anytime I would try to get comfortable to sleep, he would like kick all the monitors around, and then they'd have to come back and readjust the monitors and
oh wow,
get it all settled again. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna sleep eventually, right? Mm-hmm. Nope. I didn't sleep at all during that whole labor, and I was kind of on the fence about epidurals, which was really interesting to me because I always pre-pregnancy, right? It was like my only understanding of epidurals was this was something that made birth less painful, And so for me, I was like, yeah, why would anyone not do that? If it's there, do it. And then I kind of learned what they actually were. I was like, oh, I had this really interesting reaction to learning more about epidurals. And I was actually like feeling like I was totally opposed to them, but didn't really know why. Like I didn't really have a good statement for why I felt that way. So it was sort of like,
Did you feel like you had to justify why to anybody?
Sort of, but not really. Like I was kind of okay in my not so sureness.
Yeah.
Well, it's
a feeling.
My thing.
Too.
Yeah, it's a feeling. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why, but like I can't give you an answer because I don't have one. But I also wasn't necessarily totally opposed to it. I was like, okay, if I'm in just excruciating pain and there's something that can help with that, yeah, we'll play it by ear. We'll see what goes on. And I mean, there were some things that made sense for me. Like, oh, I want to be able to like feel this whole process and know like when to push and feel my contractions, be able to walk around. And like there were reasons, but none of that was stuff that I was so strong about that I was like, this is why I don't want an epidural. But they talked me into getting one because my contractions got really painful and like I'm sleep deprived. I'd been there for like 2 days at this point, and they're like, it's close, but you still got a little ways to go. And if you're in this much pain, like you should just really like they talked me into it. So I was like, okay, we'll do it, sure. And it wasn't placed correctly.
No.
So after all that, yeah. So my legs, like from my, like halfway down my thighs down, were like painfully just dead numb. Couldn't move them. Like they hurt, even though you can't feel them. It's like when you fall asleep on your arm, and you like wake up and it like it doesn't
painful.
register that it's your arm almost. And you're like, ah, and you're like shaking this dead arm, but it hurts. It's a really weird sensation. I don't even know if anyone else has experienced
That has happened to me. Yeah.
Me too.
And I literally looked down and it wasn't there because it was like behind me. And
Oh
so
my
I was
gosh.
like, what?
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a bizarre feeling. So that's like what's going on with my legs, right? Like suddenly my legs are not mine anymore, but they hurt. And I'm like, but I had feeling from my thighs up. I was like, this is not
Ideal here. This is
not
the
great.
spot
Yeah,
that
I'm like,
you would like that support.
Exactly. I'm like, this is, and by that point, like my contractions they were going for it. And they're like, oh, we can't really, they're like, we could try to replace it, but it's a little dangerous. And, I'm like, just, no, we'll just leave it. That's fine. Whatever. I was like, I don't want to do that again.
Oh, man. Making a choice between staying as uncomfortable and in pain as you are, or like taking a risk to try. That's a tough choice when you're in the middle of
when you're in the middle
contractions
of it and sleep deprived and just all this. I was just like, okay, all right, we're just gonna work with what we got. We're just gonna do it. Okay. But I couldn't eat after the epidural, which I didn't know that. And it was a lot longer than, again, they thought it was going to be, than I thought it was going to be. So I'm starving. I'm sleep deprived. My legs are painfully numb, but I can feel all the ouchy stuff. I was not happy.
Yeah.
Can you remember like roughly how many hours you were having intense, painful contractions that were not, before you were actually in the pushing stage?
I mean, I feel like it was at least 24 hours. I mean, with my contractions, they were like, this is going to happen like within the hour.
Oh,
Like,
gosh.
I kept hearing within the hour for like at least 24 hours, it felt like. And I was like, oh, like, this is...
That's like 10 times worse than when you're on an airplane and they're like 30 more minutes, 30 more minutes, 30 more minutes. You know what I mean? Like it's harder when you're just like, I just have to make it this long.
Right.
And then you do, and then you do again, and then again, and then again. That sounds.
And how can they give you those promises too? Like, what are they going?
And why do they say it the 10th time?
I know. Yeah. Wait a minute. Haven't we learned anything by now? No, really, we are. We're making progress. Like, you're so much more dilated now. And at this rate, it's going to... But my water hadn't broken. And that was sort of like the last little thing that I was holding on to, right? For this, like, my body is going to do this. At some point, it is going to figure it out and it's going to go into labor. Nope. Like, and that was sort of the last straw. They're like, look, we have to. Like,
break the water?
Yeah, because it had just been going on for so long, right? These contractions were just going and going and going. And what's crazy is, like, I think it was within half an hour of them breaking my water was when I finally was ready to push.
Oh, wow.
That really, I mean, that did it. But it was so just like, do you have to? Like, that was like my one last little thing to have this, like, natural labor that I wanted to have.
Yeah.
Literally popped. But, it was what it was. And I think I met like every doctor on staff there in the time that I was going through labor. So I was like, I don't know who's going to be delivering my baby.
Which is so anxiety provoking. You don't know this person. Who is it? There's just so many things not going the way you hoped for and out of control.
I don't remember the name of the doctor who actually delivered my baby, which makes me feel guilty. It's like, oh, that's something I should really remember.
There's a lot of other things going on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But then once we got to that, they broke the water.
What did that feel like?
Weird. Like my legs were so painfully, dead, numb still, but like I could feel it. So it was just sort of this like wetness, but then nothingness, because my legs were just gone. But like it kind of goes underneath you, like they catch it in a.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't see what was going on, but
So you couldn't even like get up to walk, even though you had all of these sensations.
Which really bummed me out because like being able to walk and I did before I waited on the epidural for a while, you know, and before that I was just doing laps, figure eights. I was just cruising and saying hi to all the nurses and hanging out on the yoga ball. And I liked being active, and I wanted to be able to like kind of change positions and, you know, do all that. And I just couldn't. Other people had to move my legs for me.
Wow.
But yeah, like I said, as soon as they broke the water, it was like within half an hour I was pushing, and then it was like less than half an hour of pushing. And the kid was born. Like it was like this excruciatingly long labor, and then all of a sudden, boop,
Wow.
done. Like, okay.
Do you feel like being able to feel when to push and all of that sort of helped you take back your power in having a natural, like wanting to have a natural labor?
Yeah, in a weird way, it was sort of like, oh, well, maybe this epidural didn't work so that I kind of could still have that experience. Like, and it did make pushing, well, I don't want to say easy, because it definitely wasn't easy. And it also like undid everything that I had learned. Like I had learned all these like, you know, breathing exercises and techniques that I was going to use. And then they just were like, no, do it this way. And I was like, okay. So I had to like learn a whole new way of breathing and doing this. And
do you feel like that was helpful to you, or that it sort of took away from what you were trying to like go inward to do yourself?
I think at that point I was just sort of in survival mode, and I was like, okay, like, we're just rolling with the punches here.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was kind of a surreal experience by then. You know, I'm like, I was so tired. And just, it went from this really long, slow, tedious wait to just real fast. Like, whoosh, everything's happening. Okay. And no one predicted how big my baby was going to be except for me. I had this feeling that I like had this huge baby. I was like, he's going to be really big. My doctor was, I'm guessing like 7.5 pounds, you know. It's like, that'd be really cool, but I don't think so. And, you know, everyone else's guesses were like under 9 pounds. And he was 9 pounds, 8 ounces with a 15-inch head. Wow. They were like, you were all baby.
Wow.
So, like, you know, no one was expecting that. And, like, the pushing was going really fast and it was going really well. And there was a midwife in there and the doctor, and they're like, oh, this is great. You're not even going to tear. And all this. I was like, yes. You know, I was really worried about tearing. And, but then, like, the last push, tons of tearing.
Oh.
Like, brutal, terrible tearing.
No.
And, which hurt.
Of course.
A lot,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. And then I can feel it, and then I can feel them stitching it up. Because I'm not numb where I need to be numb.
Don't they do a local anesthetic when they do that, though, as well?
Yeah, they were. And it was one of those things where it was, so I'm like just meeting my baby. Like, I've just gone through this crazy labor and delivery and all of this, and I'm like meeting my baby. I'm overwhelmed. I'm in pain, and like just trying to process what's going on. I'm just crying because this beautiful little being, you know, is like here, and then they're stitching me up, and I'm like, ouch! Like, and they're like, oh, we're gonna give you some anesthesia. Just hold on a second. We're getting it. You know, I'm like, how about you do that first? Instead of like, we're going to do one more stitch and then get it. Like, no, thank you.
Oh my gosh, you've endured so much medical trauma.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That would be horrible for someone who didn't go through what you've already gone through with anesthesia.
Right. Yeah, just so many other things. And part of it's like, you know what? I've kind of experienced the worst of the worst. Like, this is what it is. Oh, well.
The image, though, of, like, all these people around you, I'm sure, and, like, you have this, like, raw newborn baby
Fresh
on you.
little
And
baby, yeah.
someone stitching you up.
Yeah, 2 people stitching me up. The doctor and the midwife are both down there, and I'm just...
And there's, like, this
like,
bright light, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, this one's like a zigzag and a diagonal. I mean, I had a lot of tearing and a lot of stitches.
Oh, no.
And, like, just crazy patterns. Like, it wasn't just a simple stitch up job.
They needed to
what is, yeah.
do it well.
Yeah. And I think there were some other kind of complications going on that they were kind of actively trying not to talk about to not freak me out, which I was grateful for, you know? Like, I just wanted to enjoy my little sweet new baby.
Well, if you could capture in words what was going through your mind, or just that first time meeting your baby, what that was like, with all these other things going on too.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's just wow. And also, what? I mean, just, I don't think there are words. The first thing that I like have this really clear memory of, like when I got to just hold him, was like touching our noses together. Like just this like, hey, you're here. Like we're in this together. We did this together. We made it. Mm-hmm. And I still do that, you know, like every time I like touch our noses, I'm just like, yes. It's like our little magical world. So cool.
That's so sweet.
But he also is like freakishly strong, literally right out the gate. Like they put him on my chest, and I only have one breast. I don't know if I mentioned that during the whole cancer talk thing. I had a single mastectomy, so I have one breast and just nothing on the other side. Which there's a whole long story behind that, but we don't really need to go into that. But
if it feels important to you, I'm definitely curious, but whatever you'd like to share, if it feels...
Why are we stuck with the single boob? Really, so I sort of joked at the beginning of cancer that like, well, the silver lining in all of this is that I'll get a free boob chop at the end, you know? I always kind of used humor to cope with that sort of stuff. And I went through 3 different oncologists during this whole journey. I had just really, really heavy chemotherapy that was kind of like the most brutal combination that you could possibly do. And it wrecked me. I would be hospitalized for 2 weeks, and then I would get to go home for like a day or two and get another round of chemo, and then I'd go home for like a day, and then I'd end up back in the hospital for like 2 weeks. And like getting blood transfusions, and just, I mean, it was being poisoned, you know, and my body did not do well with it, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, none of it. Like I was just not okay. And it got to a point where I was like, I cannot do any more chemo. Like it is killing me every which way. And I can't. I'm like, okay, we'll do the surgery and then we'll, you know, assess from there. I'm like, we can do the mastectomy. And I was under the impression that they could do the surgery and that I could do radiation after the surgery and then have the reconstruction and kind of go from there, right? And be back in some sort of semblance of normal. And I went from I had the surgery. It was successful. I got the cancer, moved my whole boob and the lymph nodes, and I go back for the checkup, and they're like, okay, so we got to do more chemo and radiation now. And I was like, no, we don't. We're not doing more chemo. I will do the radiation. That's fine, but no more chemo. Like I truly would rather die than do chemo at this point, was where I was at. Like, this is not, like, I am no longer living, which sounds really dramatic, but that's where I was. And I think I mentioned earlier, like, kind of everything in oncology world feels really pushy and judgy, and they're really pushy. And they just kept insisting, like, no, you have to do more chemo. And it got to a point where I finally got up in the middle of this appointment, and I ran away. I ran into the elevator, and the doctor was chasing me. She was like following me, like trying to be like, no, like don't run away. And I like dart into this elevator that's full of people. I get to the back, and it's like a scene from a movie, right? Like I'm watching the elevator doors close, and this doctor's on the other side, like, what are you doing? you know.
Oh
I was
my
just
gosh.
like, and the doors closed, and that was it. I was just done. I ran away. And so I didn't do any radiation. I didn't do any more chemo, and I didn't get my reconstruction because they wouldn't do it. I met with someone else that was like, no, we won't do the reconstruction unless you've gone through the radiation. And I was like, okay, well, I'm willing to do radiation, but no one's willing to do radiation without doing chemo. So I kind of feel like you're holding my body hostage at this point, you know, like that's a really weird scenario.
Is the chemo intended to get more of the cancer, or had they not gotten all of it, or what?
They had gotten the whole tumor out, and I think it was like a preventative measure. I think because it was so aggressive. I mean, I had like a 15 centimeter tumor, which is really huge. Like it was, like, there were several doctors. I was like, that's the largest breast tumor that I've seen in the States. That's crazy.
Well, I mean, to hear that too, why do they tell you these things?
I know, right? It makes you feel so much better.
Right.
Yeah. I named it Lumpo-a-Rump, the name of my tumor. I had to have a sense of humor through that whole thing, or I would have just gone crazy. But
Oh my gosh. I still feel like
I know
it should
hard.
still be your choice.
I know,
your
right?
treatment
You would
is
think.
your choice still.
Yeah,
Like
I think.
Yeah, like what's the risk of doing reconstructive surgery? It's like then it's on you too if it, you know, it's,
Yeah, I was like, look, I'll take responsibility. Like, it feels really weird to be like lopsided and missing a part of my body, you know, even though, and I finally just gave up. I was like, okay, fine. You know, I don't want to, I'm too tired to keep fighting this fight, you know, but it sucked.
Yeah.
Like, it really sucked because I was like, okay.
How long ago was this now?
It has been since 2016. So I'm trying to
7
math with
years?
my mom brain. Yeah.
Yeah, 7. Because it's almost 2024.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Jasper was placed on that area.
yeah, so he was placed where I didn't have the breast, and he just knew what to do. He rolled over and just army crawled across my chest and latched on and started nursing.
wow.
Like immediately when they placed him on my chest, and Michael and I are just looking at each other like, do you see this? Oh my gosh. What? Like, just blew my mind. I'm like, you are the smartest. How would you know that? You've been in this world like 30 seconds.
Wow.
Like, just straight to it.
Did you notice your nipple got a lot darker?
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird.
There's a reason for that, so that they can, because they can't see very well.
Oh,
and so it creates
that makes
contrast.
so much sense. Okay. Yeah, I get that now.
It's cool, right? That
Yeah.
your body can
I
change the
know.
color of your nipple.
Yeah. There's so many little teeny tiny details like that. That's like, wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Our bodies are amazing. And for me, being able to realize that too was really powerful. Like, even through all the trauma and all of that, I was like, yeah, our bodies are incredible. Whoa. And I didn't get cancer during the entire ordeal. So, you know what?
That's amazing.
It was awesome. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
You like, defeated those odds that they gave you so many times. You did it.
Yeah. And not long before I got pregnant, actually, I had waited to get the port removed for I was traumatized, and I was like really nervous about that. And like, I had ran away from treatment, and I like just didn't want anything to do with it. And so I left that port in for way longer than I should have. And like, it finally got way past the point where I was like, okay, this thing really needs to go. And the surgeon who was removing my port, this was during COVID, and they weren't doing a ton of surgeries. And the surgeon was like, you know what? I was looking at your history of cancer, and if we removed your ovaries, that would be a really good preventative measure. Like, you're high risk for ovarian or cervical cancer or recurring breast cancer. If we just go ahead and like remove those. It's really easy. It's a really easy procedure. And I'm like,
during your surgery that was scheduled?
it was
They were
during my
suggesting that?
pre-op. It was during my pre-op for getting my port removed.
So
he's like,
at the pre-op for the surgery, he was suggesting doing it that day, or just like in general?
in general.
Oh, okay.
But he was like, I mean, we could do it the same time as the port surgery if you want. It'd be really
It's
like,
easy
I
to
got
just
free
get this
time.
organ removed. Like,
Yeah.
no need to go home and sleep on it.
Right?
Oh my god.
And I
the
was just,
audacity sometimes.
the audacity is right.
From how, like, the impact of what you're saying on somebody's, like, how.
Well, you're not supposed to have another baby anyway. Yeah. So why would
that
you
was
need to
before
keep
the baby,
those?
right?
It
Yeah.
was like right before the pregnancy.
Yeah.
Like a matter of months, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it just, like, my body had such a strong reaction. Like, physically, I was, like, shaking. I was like,
And this,
no.
and he's going in to remove that at that.
Yeah, it's like my port. It has nothing to, it's like, are you just bored because you're not doing surgeries? Like, what is the deal?
Yeah.
I feel like that's an example of healthcare providers sort of putting blinders on to the reality of what their patients are experiencing emotionally, and literally just looking at it like, well, obviously you're not going to have a baby.
Right.
That's so high risk. And like, this just makes sense on paperwork. And like, so let's talk about it. And it's just like that.
But it
it's
wasn't
so
even
much
a
more
let's
than that.
talk about it.
Right.
It was just the like, this is a
Matter of
great
fact.
idea. You should do this. It'll be easy. Recovery super fast. It's no thing. I'm like,
Yeah, because the recovery is the number one
yeah, I'm like,
concern here.
and I had to go through an induced menopause when I started the cancer treatment. So I've already been through menopause, and that would start it again. I'm like, I don't.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, my body will go through menopause when it's ready to do that, when it's time. Like, I don't need to sign up for that.
I wish more things were presented to you as choices.
Yeah.
Because that's what they are.
I know.
Even like we talk about that in childbirth, like even stitching you up and saying, hold on a second, we'll get you some local anesthetic. Like it should be like, do you want us to stop until we get you some local anesthetic? Like it's your body. These things should be present. Of course, there's not always time. And of course, it can be hard to do 100 times.
Yeah.
When you just want to like get on with your job, you know what you're doing. But like every time you're in a situation like that, that could be the only time you're experiencing that.
Yeah.
And having a choice is so huge because it is your choice.
Right.
And it just gets under my skin.
I know. I mean, looking like with some perspective and looking back on it, it's like, oh, I think there was some urgency because of blood loss. And, it's like, okay, like I kind of get it now. But in that moment, I was really mad about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are my first seconds with this baby, and like, all the pictures, my face is in excruciating pain because they're stitching me up and I can feel every little thing. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
So how do you feel now about your chest, and how has that been with breastfeeding?
Oh my goodness. It's been kind of a roller coaster. Like I get really self-conscious about it sometimes, and other times I don't care at all. It's really frustrating to find bras because the breast that I do have is very large, and the other side, there's nothing. They do make these little like prosthetic fake inserts that you can put into you get a fancy special bra, and there's like a little pocket. So it looks like you have, they're always the wrong size. They're like heavy. So it's like kind of like you do it for, you like wear it for a few hours and you're like, oh, my neck is getting, like it's a weird, like not worth it. And they get hot and sweaty. Just like, okay, no. But if you don't wear anything in it and you're wearing a bra, it like folds in. So then it looks like you have this weird like double lump on it. It's like, so visually it's obnoxious, but I kind of got past that and like kind of finally found some like bralettes. And I was like, all right, that's fine. We're just gonna leave it flat. But with breastfeeding, it's really interesting because there's times where I'm almost grateful for it and times that it really sucks.
Interesting.
Like the there's so many things that no one tells you about breastfeeding until you're just in it. I had no idea what elastic nipples are. I have an elastic nipple.
Oh.
I had no idea what tongue tie was.
What is an elastic nipple? I've never heard of that.
It's like a extra stretchy nipple. So
I feel like mine are like that now after a year of breastfeeding. They're like,
it's like those, kind of the funniest way that I always think of it is like those cartoons, you know, when a cartoon character like sees something and their eyes like pop out of their head, like, like that's how I feel.
Okay, yeah.
My nipple is. Getting fitted with pump parts was really tricky because it would stretch all the way to the back of the flange.
Oh, wow.
And like hit the back and like blister.
oh.
So I had to like get all these like fancy different pump accessories to work with this elastic nipple, which it was a lot, and that was super tedious. And
all you want to do is like feed your baby, right?
yeah. Unfortunately, like the elastic nipple thing isn't problematic with breastfeeding. It was more so with the pumping that it was like, ugh. But the tongue tie, I didn't know what tongue tie was. And the hospital experience was so bizarre. I stayed for 2 days in the hospital after all of that. And the first, like the majority of it, like there was a lactation consultant that came in and nurses, and everyone was just like singing our praises. Like, wow, breastfeeding is amazing. You're doing so great. Doing everything right. Keep it up. You know, and I felt so good about it. And I was loving every second, and it was great. And then it was after we were supposed to leave. Like our checkout time had like come and gone, and we're still waiting on the pediatrician and this other lactation consultant that wanted to see me. And so we're all like packed up, ready to go. Like, okay, we'll wait. And I was in so much pain from all of the tears and stitching. And I mean, I knew that it was going to be painful afterwards. I was not even remotely prepared for just how painful it was. Like just sitting, going to the bathroom, anything. I mean, it was just awful. So anyway, this other lactation consultant comes in like as we're trying to go. And she was like, "You're doing this all wrong." I'm like, what? You know, everyone that I've seen has been, you know, praising how well we're doing. And so she starts like just like physically moving me and my baby around into all these different positions. And I'm like in excruciating pain. I had run out of witch hazel, and they were like, "Oh, we can't give you any more." Are you kidding me? Like, you know, I have some at home. And I'm like, okay, cool. So this car ride home after this painful thing, like, I'm not gonna, okay.
Whoa.
Great. Awesome. Thanks. So
Why can't they give you witch hazel?
I don't know. It was really weird because the whole time I was there, they were so, you know, yeah, take all the stuff you need. Anytime you run out, we'll give you more. We'll give you more. Make sure you have extra to go home with. It's no problem. You know, take everything in the room. And I was like, okay, I'm out. And I'm like, nope, that's it. Okay. Cool. Great. Thanks. Weird. Just a weird fluke. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so then this, like, she comes in and she's like, you're doing it all wrong. She's like forcing us into all these different positions. It hurts. You know, she's like flipping my body around, flipping the baby around. I'm crying. I mean, I was just from pain and frustration and fear. I mean, this isn't what you want to hear right before you go home with this new baby who you're already like, oh,
Things are going well.
I don't know. What am I doing? Who let me be a parent? Oh my gosh, I'm a parent. You know, like, guess we're figuring this out together, you know, but
feeding had been going well before that, right?
At least that's what I was told. And so, you know, she just kind of rocked my entire universe. And like, we left there feeling so confused and anxious and just like, what? And then she also mentioned that he had lost more weight than he should have by that day. And so we had to do a follow-up appointment with the pediatrician. And so it went from this like, he's so healthy and thriving and wow, amazing, to just suddenly, like right before we leave, saying, nope, this is scary and dangerous, and you're doing it wrong, and he's losing too much weight. So, and they fitted me with, they didn't teach me how to pump in the hospital, really. I mean, they did like a 5-minute thing, and they fitted me with a super wrong size flange because they didn't catch the elastic nipple thing. And so I had this just giant flange that was, I think they gave me a 28 and I was supposed to get a 21. That's a big difference. You know, all these little things, but no one had mentioned this tongue tie thing until I go in for this follow-up with the pediatrician who's like, oh, I think there's a little bit of tongue tie going on. I'm like, what is that? You know? No clue. So I learned more about that at the first appointment with the lactation consultant. And
You saw a lactation consultant on your own?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was really good and helpful, and she helped me feel a little bit more sane about everything. And he did. He was dropping a little bit more weight, but he was a huge baby. And big babies need to consume a lot to like keep up with that weight.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And I'm only working with one breast. You know, so they're like, you know, maybe you should supplement, and like trying to figure out how to do that. You know, it's like, okay, well, how much do we supplement, and like how much is he getting when he's nursing? And
It's so much to learn.
Yeah.
It's so much to learn
no
no matter which direction it goes with feeding.
Yeah. And so I'm just like learning on the fly, and she was like, yeah, he definitely has some tongue tie, and you should go and get that clipped. And like, that was traumatic for me. So they have to go in and like snip the little area under their tongue, which bleeds a lot, and apparently is fine for the baby. I mean, I don't know who really knows that for sure, but I mean, he bounced back right away, and it did help.
Do they give an anesthetic to the baby or any? Or
I
is
don't
it
think
just
they did. They just did. I couldn't be in the room. I was like, I just blood everywhere. Like I stood outside the door and I was just like crying and like touching the door. Like his dad wasn't there with him, you know. So he had someone. I mean, I felt really guilty, but I also was like, I'm gonna like,
it's a part of you.
I'm gonna be a problem if I'm in that room and I see that much blood with my baby. And they're like, that's totally normal.
Yeah.
There's oftentimes moms can't do it. But then we had a lactation appointment literally right after that. He like got his tongue clipped, and then we went across the hallway and then nursed and did all that. So that was reassuring. And
was there an immediate difference in nursing after that?
yeah,
It's also so raw and like
I know
open.
you would think that it would really be painful, but it didn't seem to bother him at all. He was just like, oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
But no one mentioned to me that there's a chance that they would need it clipped again.
Does it grow back or does it need to be cut? I don't know much about tongue ties.
I still don't either, but he had to have it done again at 7 months. And which I didn't know. So I waited, and like he was still nursing almost every hour during the day, most days. I was like, this seems kind of excessive, you know, and it didn't feel like a supply issue, you know, because he wasn't really emptying my breast. And it was like, okay, you're just kind of like snacking for a little bit. And then like, you don't want to nurse more.
To eat efficiently.
Yeah. So he like wasn't emptying the whole breast. So he was just like eating for a little bit, like every hour for 7 months.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I was like, this is just like, I just kind of put up with it for a long time. But finally, it was my partner's mom who like reached out to his sister, who is also a lactation consultant. I was like, hey, you know, Anna's still nursing like every hour. What's going on with that? And she had 3 kids who had to get tongue tie snipped multiple times.
Whoa.
One of them 3 times. What? So
I've
she
never
was
heard
like,
of this happening more than once.
I know. I hadn't heard of it at all originally, but
So did they didn't tell you why? They just said that you needed to do it again?
well, no. So no one had caught it except for
Right.
Michael's sister,
Yeah.
right? Who was like, hey, maybe have them check his tongue because he might still have some tongue tie. And that could be what's going on with this like hourly nursing because it shouldn't be, you know, at this stage. You know, there's cluster feeds and growth spurts and sure every now and again, but for 7 months straight, have them check the tongue. Okay. So I did. And like I go in for this lactation appointment. She's like, oh, his latch looks good and everything looks good. I'm like, okay, but will you please check his tongue? Because, you know, I'm feeling like we should check that. And she was like, oh, sure enough. Yeah, he does. He does still have some tongue tie. She was, you know, and I'm like, well, like, what do we do about that at this point? And she was like, well, if there's no issues, then it's okay to leave it. But if there are issues, then they should, you know, snip it again. And there were definitely issues by that point because he had sprouted teeth and his tongue wasn't covering his teeth when he was nursing every hour. So on my single boob, just this raw spot around the base of my nipple from his teeth. And I kept getting these recurring blebs. Yeah. Have we heard of blebs? Milk blisters. Weirdest name ever. When I got the first bleb, I was like obsessed with the word bleb, and I kept thinking about, I'm like, who came up with that name? Like, was it a mother who was like, oh, what now? Bleb.
Yeah.
But that was because my ducts were clogged because he wasn't emptying all the way, and so it was like this recurring thing. So there were all these problems, and it had gotten so painful that I had to switch to exclusive pumping for a couple days.
How was that for your son to switch to what he had known for a while and then?
Yeah, I mean he likes bottles. He'll chug bottles right down.
Okay.
He's got no problem with that. And amazingly, my supply with the one breast has been fine. We supplemented for a little bit in the beginning with the formula until he kind of caught up on his weight. And he hasn't used formula for probably 6 months.
Wow.
So
there's wisdom in the breast, right?
Totally. I'm still in shock. I'm like, how do I make this much milk out of one? Whoa.
For a big baby.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but it was, I mean, I was ready to throw in the towel. I was like, this is unbearably painful. Like, I couldn't nurse him anymore because I felt like I was going to black out every time he and he's a biter too, bites. And they're like, oh, you just have to calmly say no, remove him from the breast and pause nursing. Like, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. In reality,
when a baby bites you, your instinct isn't to be like, let's remove you gently. It hurts.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've yelped, and he will laugh at me. Little psychopath. Like, I love you, but you are. No. I mean, I get it. He's a baby. You're making a funny sound. Okay. Yeah. But in my brain, I'm like, what?
Oh, my gosh.
Rude. It's rude. Yeah. So working on the calmly, not making a sound. But then, it's like, you remove him, still hungry.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you do then?
Yeah.
I want to keep nursing, but I just bit you. So, okay, so then you both suffer for a little pause.
It's so
a
hard
whole thing. Yeah. But so I was just like, no, we gotta do something about this tongue. Anything that'll help, And so he did. And he was 7 months at that point, and so it wasn't a pediatrician that did it. He had to go to an ENT.
What's an ENT?
Ear, nose, and throat doctor. Okay. Which they changed the name of to a head and neck surgeon or something like that. I remember when I saw to make the appointment, I was looking for ENT in the app, and they were like, you have a referral for like a head and neck surgery. And I was like, what? Because there was some concern about the shape of his head for a little while, but then that it turned out to be fine. They were just keeping an eye on it. And, so it was like a little heart-stopping moment of what? And I was like, okay, it's just the tongue.
Yeah. That I see. It put you in a panic, the name of it. Because you're like, well, does he have to go get surgery?
Yeah. I was like, did I miss something? And he needs to like have this head surgery now. And but he didn't. It was just the tongue. And so they did that, and it seemed to help. There's still some days where he nurses every hour, but I think he's just a big, hungry, growing boy. And I actually got it was like my Hail Mary was getting those little silverette nursing cups that we were talking about. I had never heard of them, and Michael's sister hadn't heard of them. Like, I ran it by her. I was like, do you know? Because they're expensive. You know, it's not like this cheap thing you can try. Like, I was doing the hydrogel pads and like saline washes, all this wound care, and just trying everything. And it just hurt. You know, it would scab to my nursing pad every night and rip it off in the morning.
So painful.
Yeah. And so, you know, I'm like looking around for things, and I came across those little silverette things, and I was like, well, I'm not expecting a miracle, but if there's anything that can help a little bit, like, I'll take it. Otherwise, I have to quit. I don't know what else to do, you know? Like, either look into exclusive pumping or, I don't know, I'll figure it out. But I got those little silverette things, and within 24 hours, no more pain. And I was like, what?
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah.
I'll link them in for other people.
So what do they help with?
It just took away the pain. Like,
So they're
sound
magic.
Like I think so. I sound like a lunatic.
Do you have one on right now?
Yeah.
It's this little like
I've seen them and I know what they look like.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
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 they're great. Yeah, it's silver, isn't the 925 silver? And
Yeah,
it
it's
has
a special kind of silver with like antifungal, antimicrobial properties, and you put a little breast milk in it and just put it on. And you know, I was thinking like, okay, it'll be nice that like it won't have a scab form to it,
Right.
and it'll be like a barrier so it won't rub against anything. And I was kind of thinking that would be the extent of it. I truly do not understand how it has made it like pain free, because there have still been like open wounds that were healing, and I look at it and I'm like, that should hurt. Like, that looks painful, but it doesn't feel painful.
Wow.
So bizarre.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I like, you know, part of me is like, I should write a review about these. And I'm like, I would just sound like one of those lunatics that I wouldn't listen to. You know, like, I was reading the nurse reviews and I'm like, there's no way it was that great. You're getting paid, or I don't, you know, I was skeptical, but hopeful. And so
we want everybody to have them.
yeah, silverettes they're called. Yeah,
silverette's
Cool.
nipple shields. Well, no, those are different nipple shields. Those are usually plastic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not.
Silverettes.
Yeah. I tried nipple shields with him when I was having all that pain with the nursing, and it just did not.
Yeah, they latch onto the plastic, right?
Yeah, like silicone stuff. And I don't know if it was an elastic nipple thing or if that's everyone's issue, but like the sizes on them were weird. They didn't stay put. Like, one of them, he would just suck the entire thing into his mouth, and I'm like,
That's scary.
yeah, no. You know, but like trying to hold it on there. Yeah, so I was like, nope, that's not gonna work. We're not gonna do that.
There's so many things to figure out.
Yeah,
Like we said that already.
I know.
With feeding, but there's answers out there to very specific problems, but it's hard to find. But it seems like you're in a better place now.
Yeah, it's been a lot of trial and error and a lot of research. And I mean, I'm really lucky to have resources and people that I can talk to and ask questions. And yeah, but who knew?
How has your mental health been with breastfeeding every hour? 'Cause that's really, really hard.
It is really hard. I definitely catch myself kind of putting that on the back burner. Kind of a lot of stuff with myself I put on the back burner. I know we had talked about that before, where it's like, I shower once a week, you know, because it's like, this baby needs so much. And when I finally get a break, I need to do dishes or laundry or, something for the baby. And so that kind of like time for ourselves gets like postponed.
First thing that's cut, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And same with the mental health. It was like, this is really hard, but it's also like, this is nourishing my child. This is their nourishment. This is their like source of food. This is really important work. And that was kind of the thing that would push me, but it was also like, really grueling and tedious to be like, and feeling, like how can my partner understand that? I mean, to an extent, sure, but like, like it is exhausting to do that, like to produce that much milk, to do this every hour.
And it's not just a like, daytime thing.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of was mostly.
Oh, really?
Because like I would pump enough for like a morning bottle and a nighttime bottle, and he would like sleep through the night and take a little morning nap, which was good.
That's great.
Like he would do a pretty big bottle. But I didn't want to be pumping so much that he was drinking bottles during the day. So I was just nursing during the day. But he wasn't drinking as much as he would with the bottle when he was nursing. So. But yeah, it's like, okay, so my every waking moment is like nursing this kid every hour, and then getting nap trapped, doing a diaper change, introducing solids. It's like this kind of never ending cycle where it's like, okay.
Well, when it's every hour, you're literally always thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, like every waking minute for me is spent with this baby who I love so much. I mean, it is wonderful, but it is also so tedious. I mean, just...
There's that dichotomy again.
Yeah.
Both things can coexist.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's probably what keeps you going too, the love, right?
Yeah.
Like if you didn't love the baby or if you didn't want to, if it wasn't nourishing and life sustaining, then it would be like for me, I know it'd be so easy to give up like that much effort and work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. I mean, when people say liquid gold, I just thought that was so cheesy. And now I'm like,
Yeah.
Like I'm the person who's like, can't waste a single drop.
Yeah.
But also learning there's so many amazing benefits of breast milk for like skin problems. Like, which I had no idea until I was lactating and had a baby. Like ear infections, eye infections. He's never had an ear or eye infection. But,
yeah. Taking a bath with breast milk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Diaper rashes.
Yep. I use it for diaper rash, use it in the baths. Yeah, it's amazing. He has
really
great skin.
Magical.
It is. There's so many magical things about it.
Do you ever have a moment just for yourself, or do you have any kind of self-care? Even
my weekly shower. Oh, goodness. Yeah, it's getting there. I used to, my kind of go-to was always doing music, and I haven't been able to do that really since he's been, he has my full attention during the day, and like we'll do musical stuff together, little baby music toys and stuff, but like having some time to myself to really just do my own thing hasn't really happened yet, but I look forward to being able to kind of, so that's always been therapy for me. And
what do you play?
It's been a long time since I've played instruments, but my big love is the viola, a little bit of cello, a little bit of guitar, a little bit of bass, kind of.
Yeah, so strings.
Strings, yeah.
Cool.
Listen to, and then singing. So when I had surgery on my breast, getting the lymph nodes removed, I had like severe nerve damage in my right arm, and I couldn't play any instruments for years. Like I couldn't raise my arm higher than this, which people on the podcast can't see, so they don't know. But
Anna's raising her.
What degree is that? I can't.
Like parallel to the floor.
Yeah. I couldn't do it. It was like lightning bolts would just shoot.
Yeah.
But like strumming motions or bowing motions, something about that was like it would trigger these like lightning bolts, and they would last for hours, and it was like a drop you to your knees kind of pain.
Oh man.
And it was one of those things that I was so heartbroken about for a really long time because I had played instruments like since I was little, you know, and that was like my healing and my therapy and my passion, and I couldn't do it anymore, and I was so depressed about it. So I started singing, which I hated. Like, I hated the sound of my voice. I was so comfortable with instruments, but my own voice was really intimidating to me. But I needed that, like, musical therapeutic outlet so badly. And it was just kind of this amazing, like, beautiful thing of, like, finding my voice, because I needed to do something and building on that. And that led to, like, this whole other amazing experience of, like, meeting other singers and musicians and, like, finding my voice and finding ways to adapt.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you sing with Jasper?
Yeah. And it's really funny. He loves hip hop. He loves gangster rap.
Oh, amazing.
Okay. He does not care about Baby Shark. He does not care about what does the fox say. I mean, those don't do it for him, which I kind of love. I don't need to hear those on repeat.
Right.
But it is kind of funny. I'll be like walking in. We live by a golf course. I'll be like out walking him. If he starts like fussing, he needs to hear "Run the Jewels," which we lovingly call "Run the Drools" in our house. So every time I say "Run the Jewels," now I have to like pause and mentally think about it so I don't say drools. But if he's like fussy, sometimes that's the only thing that'll calm him down.
Wow.
Is listening to "Run the Drools." So I'll be like walking by this golf course and like I'll have to like, you know, play, you know, whatever. And I get these looks from people who are like, who is this tattooed hooligan playing this gangster rap to her sweet baby?
How dare she?
Yeah. But he loves, I mean, he's totally calm. Except for like when it's switching songs, there's like that pause in between and he'll start crying again.
Whoa.
And then stops when the next
my
song comes on. I'm
gosh.
like, you are an interesting kid. Like, I don't know where it came from. So we do, I've like learned some rap songs now. And he like loves it. It's really funny. But yeah.
Well, hopefully you can get to a point where you are able to do some of this for yourself.
Yes.
And so that you can better come to your kid. You know, like fill your cup. Hopefully you can keep filling your cup and get it a little bit more full in the near future.
Yeah. It feels like that's like right around the corner.
Yeah.
We can kind of finally, you know, we got this tongue tie stuff and I've got like my breast kind of managed and all of that. And
It's a process for sure.
it's coming.
Well, at the end of every episode, we ask our guests 2 questions.
Hit me.
The first one is, what advice would you give someone who is about to give birth?
So this is actually my kind of favorite little tidbit of advice, just in general, but it also really applies to this whole process. There is no such thing as control. The best, like the closest we can get to that as a human being is managing things. So just letting go of that idea that we can control anything and like focusing on just, okay, how can I best manage this situation and navigate through it? That's a huge weight off of my shoulders, like kind of often when I remind myself of that, like, okay, you know, it's out of my control. How do I manage this? How do I just get through it? But also kind of frequently reminding yourself that you're doing a good job. And like, we don't go to school for this. We don't get like formal training. You know, we don't get years of training for this. We just figure it out. And
Most of it, you're kind of winging it.
yeah, I was just going to say, we're all just winging it.
Yeah.
And I feel like social media makes it seem like nobody's winging it, and it's not fair.
Not fair at all. It is not. Yeah. It is not
People
the
who like really seem like they have things in control. It's
no.
yeah.
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah. Just manage the best you can and remind yourself that you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
and you're doing the best you can.
Yeah.
It's easy to think of all the things that you're not doing well or to be critical on yourself.
Yeah.
So it is, so important to
Yeah.
pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, like this is hard work.
Yeah.
And you've done this amazing thing, and you're, even if the dishes aren't done and the laundry's not done and everything's a mess, like you have still created life and are sustaining life, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is.
I saw a post, or I don't know where I saw this from, but it's been helping me lately, that it's not, your child won't remember the dishes being done or all the house being clean. They'll remember the time spent together and the bond and singing the rap,
Yeah, remember when my mom learned that whole Aesop rock song?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Which I think ties into our last question really well.
The last one is, what is something that makes you laugh about either your birth experience or just being a parent in general?
Other than the rap.
Oh, wow. Having a child in general, there's things to laugh about every day. But I think about the birth, I don't know why this is the thing that's stuck in my brain, but it was really hilarious to me at the time, and it still is. I don't know if it was the sleep deprivation. On the ceiling of my room, the way that the lights were laid out on the ceiling looked like this mustached face. It was like these two eyes, a big nose, and like a mustache, and it was staring directly at me.
Oh my god.
For the entire time I was there. So 3 days I was staring at this face. I can't remember
While
what I
you're
named
not
him.
sleeping.
Yeah. Yeah, my I'm like, I'd like try to sleep. Open his eyes. Staring at me with this mustache. Why?
Did you ever feel like you were hallucinating and like it would move?
Kind of, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I was like waiting for him to talk to me. I'm like, this is so. I'm like asking the nurse, I'm like, has anyone noticed this before? Like that there's like a mustached man on the ceiling, like staring down at my bits, right? Because then there's these other spotlights, that light everything else. And I thought it was so weird and hilarious. So he was kind of my friend, but also kind of creepy, and finding that weird little. And, the nurses were like, no one's ever mentioned that before. But now that I look at it, they're also like, we don't look from that angle either.
Right.
So,
And maybe someone else has noticed and not said anything.
Yeah.
Felt.
But I reckon the average person probably isn't in there as long looking at the ceiling. But I'm sure someone else has seen the face.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the mustached man is a part of someone else's story too.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Oh, man,
if he is,
it would be
I want
so
to hear
great
about
know.
it.
We're going to get so many listeners that maybe someone will be like, hey,
Yeah.
I saw the mustache man.
Yes. Okay. If someone sees the mustache man, please.
We had somebody else on who was saying the smell of the doctor's bubble gum is what stuck
the
for
juicy
them.
fruit
Juicy
gum.
fruit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always, something.
A weird little
And for me,
detail.
it's the sound of the fans. It made me feel like they were. I had listened to this meditation music, and then I wasn't listening to it anymore. But I was also sleep deprived, and the fans, and I could hear that music playing, and it was just on.
Like in the fan
Yeah,
sound?
yeah. So bizarre. I think it's the sleep deprivation.
deprivation. Oh, yeah. It
makes some weird
things
things.
weird. Yeah. Oh, man. Wow. Well,
But it seems like burned into your brain.
Yeah. I can still picture it perfectly.
for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. How was this for you to share your story?
It was good. I feel like I was a little scattered, and
It's okay.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. We loved I mean,
Yeah.
thank you so much for really getting into the nitty gritty of everything. I mean, we are here for it. And we love your story.
Yeah.
It was so great. Hi, this is Jordan. I just wanted to make sure that we shared the note from Anna where she recounts several important parts of her story that weren't discussed in our conversation, but that she really wanted to include. So I'll be reading that note now. Hello. I wanted to take some time to write down some of the things I totally spaced talking about during the podcast because they are relevant parts of my birth story. The whole process is such a whirlwind, from even before conception all the way through to looking back and sharing the story almost a year after bearing birth. It constantly amazes me how time moves both so fast and so slow simultaneously. Surreal. The big one that I'm shocked I forgot to touch on was postpartum granulation tissue. It's a rare and absolutely horrendous ordeal that apparently can happen when there has been tearing and sutures, which I had in abundance. My pain tolerance is high, but the months after giving birth were excruciating beyond anything I could comprehend. If I tried to go for a walk, I'd make it maybe 2 blocks before fighting tears and the urge to just lay down on the sidewalk. That was hard. If I stood up to wash dishes and do laundry, I'd end up on the floor sobbing within 15 minutes and be stuck on the couch in pain for the rest of the day. That was also hard. My postpartum checkup could not come soon enough. When it was finally the day, we got in a car accident on the freeway and totaled the car on the way to the appointment, with our baby in the car. That was beyond hard. Thankfully, we had a great car seat and Jasper was not only fine, he seemed very amused by the whole ordeal. He held my finger and smiled at me. Phew. So, needless to say, it took a while to get the granulation tissue looked at. Basically, it's a cluster of thousands of raw nerve endings with nowhere to go, so they just go haywire. Standing in gravity adds pressure that sends it into a tailspin. There were so many things I couldn't do because of this extreme pain, and that was a major source of sorrow. Before jumping straight to surgery, my doctor wanted to try lidocaine and estrogen cream first to relieve the pain and give it an opportunity to heal on its own. It didn't. My body had a very bizarre and extreme reaction to the estrogen cream. I did end up needing to have surgery to remove the dreaded granulation tissue almost 6 months postpartum, which was delayed multiple times by insurance. I relied on padsicles, peri bottles, witch hazel, sitting on a donut, the works, for at least 7 months after the birth of my baby. Words cannot properly convey the absolute misery of such a long recovery. However, that leads me to the next topic that didn't get enough attention. My wonderful and quite frankly heroic partner, Michael. I have known him for 19 years now, first as a colleague and then as a friend, and many years later as my beau. He has always been a source of calm, wisdom, and joy in my life, but our journey becoming parents truly amplified those qualities and then some. I could not fathom going through everything that happened without him. To list everything he did for me and our son would take hours, so I'll keep it brief and just say that the power and importance of a partner and father who is present, understanding, helpful, patient, and loving is mighty, for lack of a better word. He was my strength when I was weak. He was my peace when I felt like I was at war and in battle with my body and mind. He was and still is an absolute rock star through every step. For us, this has been a team effort, and I have to give props to him for being an epic teammate. To conclude my novel, despite the insane and traumatic ordeal that was and is my birth story, at the end of the day, I feel immeasurable bliss when my baby is asleep snoring and drooling on my chest while I sniff sweet oxytocin from his head, and my partner is asleep snoring next to us with his hand still on my foot after giving me a loving massage. I savor that moment every day before laying Jasper in his crib and crawling into bed with Michael for the night. Every new day brings new adventures. I'm happy to say that I am healed and here for it. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to share my story with such lovely humans. You are both absolute treasures, and the work you do in all aspects is phenomenal. I enjoyed our time chatting about birth and look forward to future get-togethers. I feel like I've written an actual novel and starred in my own movie at this point, so I may as well do a dedication section because I want to. To my mama, who gave me life and has been nurturing me since. To my sisters, Sarah and Melissa, for being marvelous sisters. To my soul sisters, Asa, Emma, Katie, Layla, and Nadine, for believing in me, supporting and understanding me, helping me grow, being my rocks, and all the fantastic adventures that have made me who I am. To Michael's family, for always accepting and embracing me. To Sophie and Jordan, for being incredible, inclusive women who put together a fantastic podcast. And of course to Michael and Jasper. I love my boys beyond words. All my best, Anna.
Bearing Birth is available on all major podcast streaming services. We invite you to subscribe as well as follow us on Instagram at Bearing Birth Podcast.